Докладом является Даниил. Он разрабатывает
And the reporter is Daniel. He's developing the methodology of efficient training for the OPSEC developers, StarX. He is one of the authors of the simulators on
контакт между разработчиком
safe and secure development and will tell you how to ease the work of everyone. The developers may learn in advance how to prevent vulnerabilities and to not spend time on fixing the bugs. So let us applaud to Daniel.
Всем доброе утро.
Good morning, everyone.
Спасибо большое за представление, но
And thank you so much for your
сегодня выступаем вдвоем.
introduction. And you failed to introduce Alexei. He's my core panelist for today. We're glad to welcome you today on Sunday morning. Today we will speak about who the frenemies are and why it is not fashionable to be a frenemies. If you don't know what frenemies is about, and I learned that a week ago. Frenemies, this is a term from psychology. It was invented by Graham, and that means that die-hard friends. These are the similar friends, people who are related with some positive relations, but at the same time, they treat each other a very toxic way. And we identify such relations in the AppSec teams, and in essence, such a relation has to be fixed. And following that report, I do hope that you will understand why. Give me a clicker.
Давайте познакомимся. Меня зовут Даня, я занимаюсь...
Okay, my name is Daniel. I'm involved in the practical security, and for instance, I worked as AppSec in Kontakta, and today, along with StarX, I do some training programs for the developers how to make the code safe and secure. My name is Alex. I'm also application security officer, and for a year's time, I'm making simulators for the developers in order to improve their skills in the information security. We all are doing products because the conference is dedicated to IT, and I think that this is really true. And we try to make our products safe and secure because the regulators require that, and some said that this is just push and others do not want to be hacked. I have a basic question I'd like to start our presentation with in order to ensure the security. What is most important to be done? This is a question to you in order to ease the discussion we offer. This is a multiple option question, so raise your hands. Those who believe that most important for the safety and security is to make the best in the world scanners. Well, technical security tools are really important. I understand those who raise their hands. Raise your hands, those who do believe that the obedient developers in the team who would meticulously follow your requirements. This is what you need for safety and security. Yep, and what do such developers really exist in the world? Hopefully so. Anyone wondering why security is needed? You have a whole day in order to understand why. And if not, then I will answer this your question following my presentation. And raise your hands those who believe that the communication is top important. Wow. Alexei, this is the very right room for us to check in. Unfortunately, not everyone is like us. Many believe that communication is not an important part in creating safe and secure applications. So why? This trend is there and why communication is important. Do you remember the Babylon Tower story when the people wanted to build something high and worthy being built, but they failed because they were speaking different languages? In our case, this tower, that's a product.
Продукт является небезопасным.
And when the product is not secure, it has some problems in how it works. For instance, it does not store the user's data, it doesn't live up to the expectations of the users who would wait for the release for a long time. So quality product is a safe and secure one.
Правильно коммуницировать для того, чтобы
The developers and have to communicate to each other. And the Babylon Tower probably seems to be an outdated story. But we have to remember that the history goes in cycles. Me and Alexei would like to show some clear examples to highlight how communication may make the products vulnerable and how to do it otherwise.
Надежда разработчика, который уже
I will be
капучно вся.
acting as a promising developer who loves oatmeal and smoothie, and I will be a tough OPSEC officer who is not flexible, who loves straight jackets and strict requirements, and we will look at Python
Повторюсь, как
in order to show how poor communication may result in problems in
Давайте начнем.
security. Let's begin.
Как application security специалист не рассказал
How AppSec officer didn't tell the details about how the system is to be used. As a person,
умеет разбираться.
an OPSEC officer who knows the code are do in audit of such an excellent application. This is a mini forum, and the users are free to leave their comments there. And for instance, HTML shows the comments of the users and their usernames,
И сколько
and it's been displayed on the page. And immediately there are two vulnerabilities there. First of all, this is XSS because
какой-либо обработки.
actually it's been downloaded into HTML without any processing, and SSTI. If you don't know what SSTI is about, this is a system
Если мы в шаблонизатор
template injection vulnerability. If we put in Jinjo the users
то таким образом можно будет
data without separating that from the code, it means that you can put a structure, a line, and you can achieve different consequences. For instance, getting control over the server.
этих двух
In order to fix those two vulnerabilities,
во-первых, использовать другую функцию.
first of all, you have to use another function rather than render template string
Отдельно от кода. Ну и во-вторых,
and set the parameters detached from the code. And you have to use the templates a safe way. And in the context of working tasks, I set a task to Alexei. In the line 157, you have two vulnerabilities. Do that safe. Okay, I will do that. I will use a render template. Just only one function, and this is what the developers are trained in. I can do that the secure way. And there is a request from product management that I have to make link to the pages of other authors so that users could check their social media. A couple of days later, I did everything as required. I did another field in the database and new HTML page, which through href tag would post a link to the page. Is it safe?
код поднимите
I do not know. Raise your hands, those who believe that this is safe and secure. I will tell you why this is not.
защитил.
Really, Alexei actually protected against SSTI because he used the render template. And the problem there lies in that
Дело в
link blue line, because the
код от
templates try to protect the code against
единственным образом.
STSS, but they do that the only one way.
Вот в
They would
что
actually translate
во всех контекстах.
the user context into the
Пользовательский ввод
HTML.
никакие
But for instance, we don't need any specific HTML symbols, and you can enter JavaScript alert 1 or exploit that vulnerability. What we may obtain, we
и нужно
see that the task is not done, and you have to set another task. Therefore, a couple of days later, after I set all my requests, after as an OPSEC I did whatever I had to do, I write to Alexei, have a problem with XSS.
правильно ссылочку выведи, и вот чтобы
Can you make the link the right way?
В принципе, ты мог бы сразу про все мне
In essence, you could tell me that story from the very beginning, but a couple of days later, I would read everything about XSS context, and I would realize that I can do the links manually and code that with URL. Therefore, making entry into the database, this is what I'm doing. And again, you may see that a link through href and everything is secure. Well, in that case, this is
одну задачку.
quite safe and secure, but it took you about 1 week in order to do that, and we have 1 million users. It doesn't work like that.
В конце, в конечном итоге, Леша сделал все.
And end of the day, Alexei did everything right.
Потому что
And probably the solution is not optimal because you have to make
ссылку собранную
a disclaimer that we put the link into the database, which is not good,
точнее преобразовывать ссылку прямо перед
and you'd rather
в данном случае Можно, конечно, сколько угодно винить Лешу.
do that otherwise, but you can put the blame on Alex that it took him a week to do some simple task. But actually, my request was not worded the right way. I didn't tell him that there are nuances in using those technologies, and Alexei didn't know anything about that.
Глобальную проблему.
And it resulted in that global problem.
Security, видите,
As an AppSec officer, you see the whole picture of vulnerabilities. You see some hidden problems, probably that would be worth telling the colleague. Tell him, put him in the context. If you're confident enough, you can make a reference to some database which would exemplify how you have to protect against vulnerabilities. And bearing in mind all that was said before, the ideal world picture would be like that. I may tell the developer where vulnerabilities are and why this is a fault. And please use the template engine Ginger, but use that in the right context. And please read where you can find more. And we make a reference to the database. And these should not be just links from Wikipedia or some abstract data. There have to be some practical examples, and using them, Alexei would understand how the template engine works and how the code works, etc. Next case is no hablo, information security. This is the language that I, as developer, do not speak. We continue our interactive discussion. So, who believes that this code is not safe and secure? Raise your hands. Okay. Thank you. That's really true. Let me set a regular context. We go on analyzing our Flask application, and we actually introduce gen function, which sends a request to the internal AP, which would convert the text into an image, such an artificial intelligence. And we use those secrets, these long hex lines which are marked in red. The problem is that they're stored in an open way, and this code is stored in Git. It means that everyone who has an access to GitHub may use those secrets and use that in order just to visit our AP. And Alexei, what's the problem with that? Well, have you ever set any requirements to me? Because this is the first time I got that. Well, you set request and AppSec office in the same sentence. Okay, here you are. We know that the best requests and requirements are the ones set by the regulator. So take your seat, I will tell you the story. Within enforcing the control over the use of corporate standards in terms of the cybersecurity. Okay, so read, follow, and this is up to you how to validate it. Okay, thank you so much. Do you understand it? Well, actually, I failed to understand anything, so I got some essence. So I used the variable surrounding environment, and that's it. And I thought that everything is good, and now my application is totally uninvulnerable. Raise your hands, those who believe that it's okay now. No, it's not good. And that's really true. Really, Alexei removed tokens from the open, and we cannot get them. They've been stored in a variable way. But he didn't invalidate those tokens. He didn't create new secrets. And vulnerability is still there, just like as the commit story. We may have a look at what has changed, what tokens were removed, and it means that, again, everyone who has the access to GitHub may again turn to AP and do whatever they want. Here it happened because Alexei failed to understand the requirements. So he saw a long read text and he was scared. He failed to follow the criteria, and we as AppSec officers very often set the requirement using our lingo. We talk different languages. You have to explain everything in plain language. This is the way the good communication would be launched. And we would reach the ultimate goal: safe and secure communication and development. So the essence of the regulations and requirement is not that someone learns them by heart, but you have to render that, ram it home, and that the requirements are met. If you understand the requirement, and if you understand that as an OPSEC officer, you know what can easily be done, most likely your developers have no clue about what it is. You have to describe the requirement in a plain language. So here I describe what has to be done. That secrets have to be changed and the open data has to be removed. So we remove the secrets from the open source. And
В общем-то, все. Кстати,
so in essence, that's it. Now,
так каждый раз не писать.
in order to make sure that you don't have to describe that every now and then,
Требования систематизировать. Тогда
you may systematize those requirements using certain products. Then you will not have to put it this way in task tracker. You can just make reference where render those requirements in an easy way. Next case.
Заносчивых разработчиков,
That's about some highbrowish developers just like me, who reach something, would understand that they know everything, they don't need anything, and those comments and criticism of the colleagues are totally out of
Наша фласка приложения. Следующий кейс.
reach with the, out of touch with the reality. I'll speak about the change in the delivery address.
Есть форма.
Well, that's a very simple application. So there is a form which is displayed on the page, and we can indicate the address.
Да,
And there is a SRF,
она
cross-site, cross-forgery
без знания
vulnerability. It means that the criminal, without the victim knowing that, may send a request for some
адрес доставки на свой.
tangible actions, for instance, change the delivery address to its own or change the data of the credit card. In order to secure ourselves against that vulnerability, we need such random token, which is put into the form and which prevents a criminal to create a legitimate request or inquiry, which would be sent on behalf of the user. In Flask, there is a special library which is called CSRF Protect, and really it actually can protect us against CSRF. And you can just check that automatically. Running the application, don't have to do anything. And Alexei took that easy way, and he used CSRF Protect and used GPT, and similarly everything is just good. But my question goes to you, whether this application is safe. Raise your hands. Okay. Who believes that this is not? Who has abstained? Okay.
Супер. Но на самом деле это...
That's great. That's great. But in essence, so this is CSRF vulnerable application. There is an RFC standard, probably you heard about that, and it determines such methods which are called safe and secure. Safe and secure methods, these are the ones which should not change the state on the server. We send a request. To the maximum, it would return the data, but would not change or modify the data on the server. If certain logic is being used with the use of those safe methods, CSRF will not damage it. So CSRF Protect, in that context,
не защищает. То есть он не проверяет.
is not protecting against CSRF, so it doesn't check the request as to whether it contains the tokens. And Alexei violated this standard because he is using the GET request in order to change the delivery address. Here is the line with the data, and there is a request.args, and he would get parameters from there, and you may use that in order to launch an attack. Alexei probably didn't know that, and probably was not familiar with the standards, and I will send to you a task to change and correct the application, the code.
Я про этот CSRF Protect все знаю. Я его использую.
I know everything about CSRF Protect. I'm using that, and the token is being used. And you said that in order to protect CSRF,
Вообще нет.
you need CSRF tokens, so there is no problem. So what's the problem? You say that this is not safe and secure, and why? How arrogant he is, you see.
Но на самом
That's
деле
a very
мы понимаем связь
cool
между
developer,
разработкой
but here we
и
see
разработкой, потому что вот это конкретный пример.
connection between the security and development, because this is a case when we have a wrong logic in the application, when the developer didn't know the standard and really it resulted in the vulnerability.
Обширнее.
And we can put that in broader context. And he had some smart ideas, but unfortunately they were lagging behind him.
Разработка
AppSec and
в
development
разных доменах, да, надо
are working in different domains on the same goal, but in different domains, and you cannot know everything.
адекватно
And that would be just great to perceive criticism in an adequate way.
узнавать что-то новое, узнавать новое.
And this way you will learn something new, how to make the product safe and secure, for instance. Then instead of criticizing my colleague Daniel, I will come to him and honestly would ask, what is wrong with that and how can I change that or fix it?
Расскажу,
And I will provide an adequate answer. I will say that you have to use the safe method, making sure that it is safe and secure. That's a standard that Alexei could read in order to understand more about that and offer a solution. Use post in order to change the address.
Послушав совет своего коллеги, я изменил...
And getting this piece of advice, I changed my application. Let me draw attention to the fact that in terms of security, nothing has been added. There are 2 lines about CSSR protect, and what I did, I just split the logic as so get method is being used in order
И, соответственно,
to indicate the delivery address, and method post is being used to change that address and to modify something on the server.
задачка могла решиться, и
This is actually how
узнал что-то новое про
we
то,
could
как правильно
do
писать свой же
this task, and Alexei learn something new about the code.
Очень
The
часто
case number 4,
правильно
which is very frequent, how to objectively, importantly, assess the criticality of the tasks in terms of security.
небольшой аудит приложения.
We continue the audit of applications, and here you are.
Пользователи могли там имя,
The users
адрес доставки, да, менять. То есть они
could change the delivery address, and they had to go into the system to do something. And every time when we're done with actions in the system, we certainly would to look out. And
Фласка
Alexei did look out by means of Flask
встроенного фласка.
using logout user, and it invalidates the session. And it looks nice, everything looks great, but let's look under the bonnet.
Этот код. Что делает эта функция? Она
So what this function does, it is
user ID,
specific for every cookie ID. It would just erase it and pull that out of the session. But the session is erased only on the client. If you make a logout, you will get just a 0 value cookie, and you will lose it. It means that you will never be able to log in once again. And for instance, you push the button to return to the page, but you can use that cookie because it is not invalidated. It is not erased from the server.
Если на сервере есть
That means that if there is an XSS on the server, and we had it a couple of cases ago, a criminal may use that cookie, and even logout would not help in order to save us against recover function. And that means that the developer, the criminal, will not be even forced out of the system.
его как-то
We lose track of that criminal, and it would be very difficult to invalidate that session.
Это действительно уязвимость, и это уязвимость.
Really, this is a vulnerability, and this vulnerability is not above the medium, because in order to exploit that, you need a lot of terms, XSS, the use of that function, and that vulnerability. Still, this is a vulnerability, and the OPSEC officer, Alexei, fix it,
Нужно срочно это сделать. Давай, исправляй.
because the criticality is very high. Change that. I will fix that
Он 100% удаляет.
vulnerability. Session clear would clear all the sessions, and that's it. Is it a solution? Have I fixed everything? No. The problem is that session clear is just like a logout user, but just the number of iterations is bigger. And unfortunately, Flask doesn't have one-size-fits-all method in order to clear the session totally, and you need a more substantial approach. So this is no good.
Сейчас переобулся, да?
So you have noticed that he changed his approach. First, he says that you have to do that fast
Высокая
and hurry up, that the vulnerability is of high criticality, and then he says that we need a very substantial approach, but this is no go. Well, don't make an elephant out of a fly. In
критичность уязвимости и отправил эту
our case, as far as
это критичная бизнес-задача, да, могло
actually
исправление.
considered that vulnerability as highly critical. It may stop some important business function because I believe that this vulnerability is most important and top priority. Business and development,
И безопасность, да.
business and security, they have to go on as a hand in glove, and security is an integral part of business itself. But it is not
по поводу этой ситуации, что Даня
of paramount importance. Daniel has turned into a boy who would shout wolves, wolves, and then once we have a very important vulnerability and he approaches his developers saying that something has to be fixed immediately, no one would trust him. In order to avoid such conflicts, we can assess the criticality once again and describe the task a very specific way, saying that I do not hurry you, but once we have time, I will tell you how you can fix it.
задача от своего коллеги, я
Okay, I get that task from my colleague, and I will suggest one of the options, how to fix that vulnerability. I added one field into the user's database, which is called logged in, and which is responsible for authorization. And every time a login manager user allowed, or every time the user actually checks in the system, would check whether the user authorized or not. This is an extra verification layer, and every time the user does logout, this field will become false. And what it may result in, when those authorization cookies are stolen from us, and if criminals are trying to use that, immediately once the user making logout, no one can use that once again, and there is no vulnerability now. Remember how we were shouting at each other from the very beginning because the task was put the wrong way. And if the task is formulated the right way, our dialogue would be very smooth and quiet. The case number 5, that's a situation which is very real life, and I heard that phrase many times when I started my AppSec journey. So now I'm an AppSec officer, and can you guess who gets that phrase every now and then? In a nutshell, how you can spoil your relations with a colleague with one phrase alone. So within 4 cases, I've become a very advanced developer. I realized that security is important and at school, and decided to approach my colleague with a question. For instance, I read about SQL injections and how to protect against them, and I heard about the prefabricated expressions. Well, sounds wrong way. The right way is well prepared. And do you think that really these expressions are prepared in advance? Well, guys, let me tell you again, we are using a formatted line. The prepared expressions are designed to separate the code from the user data, so it means that the criminal will not embed its own logic. When we use the formatted data, we collect that into one big request, and this way, SQL injection is still possible. But here is a question. Alexei, were you banned in Google? Why didn't you just Google it? Well, okay, I will read it myself. And so I Googled that to see what ORM is about and how it protects against SQL injections. And it says that it prevents attacks automatically escaping or sanitizing. And every time I encounter such situation later on, we use that by default. And I loved ORM so much that I use that in every line. And then product actually tells me that every time after the request, the system would suspend for about 5 minutes. Let's have a look at that request.
Большой запрос, который там рекурсивно вызывает себя, и время растет в геометрической прогрессии.
Is there any recursion? Is there a anything else like that? No, I think not. Alexei, is that a big inquiry?
По-настоящему большой
No,
вопрос. И это
that's a real big inquiry, and that's a real case.
использование ORM, которое
Because we have seen the ORM usage here, which leads to such inquiries. And it's not a big one, it just contains a few strings of code. But under the bonnet, we have this heresy, so to speak. So actually, I thought about the optimization ways, and I found some text filters which helped me perfectly. And everything worked well. We thought that ORM would always be a safe solution, and would use it as much as we wanted. So I'm not going to communicate with Dania because it feels bad. And it became safe anyway. Yes, indeed, it's a safe solution. It seems like that we use ORM, that is sending these safe inquiries and separates data from code, but we have a formatted string. Please raise your hands, those of you who think that a chromatic string would protect us from ORM injections. You think so. Let me explain why it's not so. It's the same thing. When we use text filters, we just go underneath the bonnet of the ORM and we just dictate ORM what to do. And the ORM embedded protection initiates. That's why we need to take responsibility for shielding these expressions and make them safe. That's why it may look like this, approximately. Take a look at the slide. The text filter is a bit bigger and the query is a bit longer, so we have this query with the variables shown here. Ultimately, we have this vulnerability. ORM was used, like Losha said, but this vulnerability didn't go anywhere. And the customers would complain that their app would freeze every 5 minutes. And as a developer, I lost my faith in Dania with my own requests, my own questions, because I received bad answers. And Losha stopped coming up to me, but if these situations do arise, there'll be a conflict between developers and AppSec. However, we should avoid it. It should not happen because we are pursuing the common goal. Dania, what is strength all about? Strength is all about patience. I think you're right. If some people know less than we do, it's not the reason that you play jokes on this person. Instead, you'd better share your experience. But mockery and anger only create negative reaction, which will impact the safety and security of the product negatively, like I said. So anyway, this case, when the developer comes up and see AppSec, how to do it safe? It's, it's real pleasant to hear such things. This is the situation, not to be ignored and not to be reacted in a negative way. Instead, you just need to encourage such behavior. You need to motivate people with adequate answers, with your patience, and you would always recommend people to read more information about that, send them links, etc. After 5 cases, we are now open to answer the question why communication is so important, and maybe why it's more important than other parameters just to make the product safer, I think. Well, throughout this entire presentation, we'd show different communications examples, and we decided to make this prompt list for you. What we should not do, we should not think that we are smarter than anyone else and ignore criticisms of your colleagues. As a developer, I may hate the situations when I'm being mocked at my position or when I'm being set tasks that are higher than my tasks, although my tasks are also important. And I hate when people speak strange language to me and not really wanting to explain anything to me. How to make the products safe and secure? We need to share knowledge. We are different experts in different fields, but overall we work in the same field. All together, we just need to very exactly come up with requests, because these requests should be absolutely transparent and clear. These requests, these demands should be conveyed in a way that the developers understand them well. For that, you just need to use appropriate products. It's very nice just to learn what's new in the neighboring area, because a lot of vulnerabilities occur when the developer didn't know something about the work of its technology. It's very important to evaluate critical tasks in terms of security. Then the business and the security solutions will go in the same way, and you'll give the priority to the most important tasks right now. And this shift-left approach, which has been mentioned here a lot of times in the conference, should be engaged as early as possible. You just need to come up to the guys and say, you guys, let me tell you how to avoid the mistakes, not to fix them. So the key is that we properly understand each other, and for understanding, we'd send links to different materials to learn in different cases. Sometimes you meet a foreigner. Imagine you meet a foreigner, you try to speak a foreign language, and you check up a dictionary, and he asks you questions. He's looking for ambulance. He needs ambulance, and you find this word ambulance in the dictionary, but you can't read it properly. So if we apply it to development, it's the same. It affects the business. As we establish this contact, instead we can spend this time in a more favorable way. We can establish proper contacts with the clients, develop our ideas. So we need to integrate security into development, and we need to make sure that we train people to do the programming in a safe way and secure way. So success is not just a size of clothes for me. Instead, I'll just come up to the security guy, and together we'll cover the vulnerabilities. So will it work with you? With you, it works like this. We are one by one in the enclosed environment, and we can discuss the vulnerabilities together with you. That's our situation. But in real life, there may be 5 people in the application security department with 5,000 developers. It's a huge story. So in this case, if the application security expert speaks to each and every one of them, they will go nuts. And to find the proper way, you just need to have products that provide request and knowledge, and that's how you make proper communication out of it. There are not too many AppSecs, and there are many developers. Despite that, and we belong to different spheres. Still, there are rules not to be breached. Let's just come up to each other and talk to each other. Losha, let's make a product safe together. Let's make it, Dania. Let's make it together.
Здесь QR-код на оценку доклада.
Safe and secure. So please use our QR code
Должен еще появиться QR-код на
to evaluate our presentation, and there should be another one which leads to questions on those screens, on those monitors there. Yes, thank you. Would like to remind you once again that the QR code is used to vote for this presentation. And ask your questions. Sasha is going to come up here, and he'll help me ask the questions.
Всем привет.
Hi there. Hi everyone. Lots of questions have already been answered, but I still read them. Sergey's question. Thank you for examples. How do you establish communication if you have a few AppSecs and a few thousand developers? You can't talk to each and every one of them personally. What do we do? Seems like that you answered that. Yes, we just gave one of the possible examples, that the database with exact materials, examples, will help the developers how to cover these needs, how to fix those issues, and they will learn more about application security, InfoSec, and establish communication with the application security master. When there are many people in the team, we would like to automate the process in order to not avoid wasting time, and we very often automate this through products to improve the communication. It's very important. That's what Alexei has mentioned, to teach the developers and set the requirements that should also be introduced in development.
Так, следующий вопрос от Виталии.
Next question. Who fills up the database for secure development with information? Well, ideally, there can be AppSec, but if there is no time, you can use some available products, available solutions, because even if it's AppSec, there are cases when AppSec people may not know something about it in a small company, so it's very convenient to use products that gives you the box solution immediately. Question from Natalia. Thank you for your presentation. We fill up database with knowledge, but the developers only use the links to use it when they have to fix the vulnerability, only when needed. How to make them interested to do it on a preliminary basis and make them learn to prevent the vulnerabilities, not to fix them. We mentioned that development and security are neighboring spheres. They are very often overlapping. And I realized when I was studying vulnerabilities, if there is a vulnerability, it means that somebody didn't really know that this may occur. So it means that the developer may be ignorant somewhere, so they need to improve their hard skills and learn, so it can motivate this person to grow and become a better developer. Question from Maria. You said that what are we going to do if the colleague wouldn't want to talk to you in a constructive way? Well, it's a hard situation. Obviously, we need a third party here to fix this problem if there is such an opportunity. Instead of using working communication, I mean, it's better to use the discussion to have proper working discussion and come to terms and fix the problem. Another question from Vitaly. What's the real damage was generated by bad communication between AppSec and developers? Well, I think in most of the cases, in all of the cases which were voiced these days, we saw how communication really influenced that. I don't really know how exactly, but in most of the cases, we have the problem that somebody didn't understand something, somebody didn't really know something, somebody didn't tell something to someone. So in 80% of the cases, there is such miscommunication. Question from Nikita. Can a developer be forbidden to use unsafe functions? Not always. We have absolutely clear unsafe functions. Sometimes the use of the normal function to which the developer is used to actually leads to vulnerabilities. So I think this approach in terms of prohibition is the wrong one. You need to tackle it in a different way. You just need to expand the mindset of your person and inform them about what this cybersecurity thing is all about and what's best to do it. Alexander's question. Is there your database in public access? We don't have it in public access, no, our own, I mean. But if you have a specific question about how to arrange this database, we can talk on the sideline over there, in the corner. Please come up there and we'll share this with you. Nikita's question. Could you please tell us where the developer can learn about security apart from university and angry messages from AppSec? There is a Swigger Academy port. It's public access. You can read it. People speak about vulnerabilities and there are practical labs to follow and go through. You can use the hard-to-box formats, ICTF. It's more an offensive side, but it's also important just to understand how hackers and intruders work and how to prevent the intrusions. And anything else I forgot. If you need to have links to the materials, please come up to us there in the corner, so we'll share it with you as well. I think one final question.
Ну, какой-то непонятный.
You can't this nickname. Which tools are best to use to prevent XSL injections? Maybe you'd recommend 3 top tools. Well, for detection, when you conduct audit, maybe there is an SQL map, a notorious one for XSS. I found it. I tried to find it, but those checkers are not that good because XSS is good because it has very complex context dependencies. It's not very easy to protect against it, and there are tricky ways which make it harder to detect. I read that in one of the messengers, an account can be hacked with XSS, and there is so much difference between the input and the output. It's so difficult to track. So XSS, it's best to be tracked manually.